only not want to do one, but not want to do another. So kind of said no to that.
Hard no.
Hard no to that. But really loved the opportunity.
Uh-huh.
So we started exploring opportunities throughout Dairy Block. And in touring the free market space, this kind of downstairs just really spoke to me. I was like, this is really cool. There's a ton of history of this building and what was in here before. You guys should put a cocktail bar down here. And then it just naturally evolved and was like, okay, I can do a cocktail bar down here. Let me do it. Let's do something super fun in the basement.
And I mean, we were discussing this earlier. Do we call it a cocktail bar? Because it's got the speakeasy vibes of you got to sneak in to kind of like you got to find. If you don't know, you don't know kind of vibe. But we want to make sure everybody does know. So like, you come through the elevators in the free market right next to Bruto's Kitchen. You go down to the basement. You come out and it kind of looks like the stock room from a restaurant. But you go down the long hallway and you start to get those Goodfellow vibes. You know? Like, you're like, fuck yeah, I belong. I deserve to be in here because you see the walls lit up and you can see the bar in the
Yeah.
It does feel the speakeasy vibe, but you called it a cocktail bar, so I wasn't sure if I was misplaying the terms.
You know what? I think for a little while, it was like a battle for me trying to get people to understand what a speakeasy is and that, you know, speakeasies actually don't exist anymore. They were around when drinking was illegal. And drinking has been legal for, 100 years now. So the true definition of a speakeasy is it doesn't exist unless you're doing it without a liquor license, you know? Or it's like an after-hours party, or at least in Colorado, you're a 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. sort of situation. But people are going to attach whatever name they can identify this place with. And to us, we're a cocktail bar, just happens to be in the basement. But if people want to call it a speakeasy, that's totally fine. We wanted to take that notion that people are going to call it a speakeasy and try to do things very differently than a lot of quote-unquote speakeasies and kind of the vibe of how those things normally are. So the entire front is clear glass. You can see through it. So, you know, if you can see an empty seat, like we've got seats.
It's inviting.
You know, it's inviting. We want to be very welcoming at the window when you check in and get people inside. It's a little bit lighter. You know, we intentionally kind of whitewashed the whole space, made the ceilings as tall as we could, although we're in a basement. I really did a bunch of those things.
The low hanging, but like how you did the walls behind the bar and kind of had continuums.
Yeah.
I dig it. I mean, I'm not an interior designer, and I don't think anybody would ever dare call me one, but I like the vibe in here, so I just wasn't sure.
The feng shui really works.
Yeah, comfortable, and it doesn't feel like you're in a basement, I think, is the biggest thing. Mm-hmm. You can see people next to you. You can talk to people next to you. You can have a really great cocktail and a good vibe. And we keep it loud in here. You know, we want to throw a party and make sure people are having a good time and encourage kind of this interaction with the deck of cards and with people next to you. And not be so stuffy about things, but also maintaining a nice kind of upscale experience. I don't want people to be like, you know, at the bar and getting bumped into and spilling their drink because somebody else bumped into them.
You're not looking for the View House or Blake Street Vault or whatever.
It's not our that's not our kind of scene. We want people who want to have a nice, you know, leisurely night, laid back. And if you want to engage with somebody next to you, you can. But you're not forced to, and you're not forced to wait in line to try to get a drink or, you know, getting bumped into, getting elbowed, or pushing and shoving, things like that.
And you can totally lose track of time down here, though.
Completely.
I was just thinking, like, if I
six martinis later, and Kip's like walking out at like closing time. I'm like, at least Pony Up's open for a late night.
It's dark now.
Yeah, that's true. You can go right across the street to get a sandwich from Pony Up.
So you mentioned this deck of cards. What's going on with?
Oh, the menu. Okay, yeah. Also, that's not a bad call, but it's probably bad for podcasting, seeing as they can't see it. But y'all do have a couple different things, different takes on how a craft, you know, concept is kind of come to fruition. Are these? Let's obviously talk about the menu, but are these things you learned along the way, like make it a fun, different, you know, zig when everyone else is zagged?
Yeah.
Or is it a pain point that you've kind of gone away from that you learned? What was the idea behind some of these novelties?
We wanted to, you know, pay homage to the history and things that were down here or in the building before, and the idea was kind of just to do this classic cocktail bar, take these somewhat old, somewhat forgotten, somewhat not necessarily really sought after or well-known cocktails, and make them in a really approachable way for people, and then also have the creativity to be able to bring in seasonal ingredients, seasonal items, and do that in a rotating cocktail list. And then to add something a little bit extra by having reserve cocktails. So we also have reserve cocktails that use vintage and rare spirits. So we're able to find and get some vintage spirits. There's things all the way back to the 1930s in there, 1960s, 1980s. So it's kind of like taking a little bit of a step back in time and kind of losing track of time while you're in the basement.
It is MCM-ish in here as well.
Yeah. Okay.
I know that term.
Yeah, there you go.
Shout out interior designers everywhere.
Well, that's fucking intense. Like, how does one come across bottles from the 60s and shit like that?
That's
like,
a great question.
Like, where are they storing this shit?
It is.
I thought Hitler got the rest of the good bottles from France.
I'm sure they're still hidden somewhere. That was actually a really big challenge. So we have to buy everything through distributors, importers, and keep everything on the up and up. So it took me about 2 years to find a distributor that had the capability to be able to find and certify and source those. So that one I keep close to my heart and don't share with anybody, because the more people that know about it, the more expensive they get for us. Which means the more expensive they get for the people drinking them.
Yeah. But clearly there has to be, at one point in time, you're not going to be able to make the Alaska with 1960s Coates and Co. gin.
Absolutely. That's why those things change. Sometimes we're only getting one bottle of that spirit.
Oh, that's fucking
So they
awesome.
change. Whenever it runs out, we change what's in it.
And I feel like y'all have been able to adapt fairly well. I mean, obviously everybody had to make some sort of weird pivots during the COVID months, and y'all not necessarily being a food-forward situation, it puts you on an even more precarious spot. But, we've talked about the creativity of the menu and the creativity of you outsourcing these liquors and the design. I mean, y'all did pop-up tiki bars. You turned what was once the safety deposit room, where another creative idea where you can, rent those out, and y'all put little happies in there. But, y'all have had to make multiple pivots. How are we still standing? We mentioned most restaurants fail in 1 year. Given last year, how does a craft cocktail bar survive in a situation like that?
I think it's just the nature of us as restaurant people. We're the never say die sort of situation, and we think we can do everything, either being it in a naive way or being like, we're just going to figure it out. And we're scrappy people. Yeah, exactly. He went through it, with multiple places, and they're still around, and they've been able to come out of that and thrive, I think, and do even better with a lot of their concepts than they ever have. But for us, it was really just kind of looking at every single available way to keep the doors open, keep employees paid, keep them around, making sure they were taken care of, and to make it through the last year. And that came in all forms of to-go cocktails, delivery cocktails, which I was driving myself a delivery in my, at the time, 1965 Mercedes, the only car that I had. And then we did a hot dog pop-up in the alley.
Diesel?
It was actually not a diesel.
Okay, because I remember my grandmother had the old ones as well, and you would see that it had it written in full text.
Diesel, yep.
This bitch is diesel.
Yep.
That's probably where they keep those 1960s bottles of liquor.
Yeah, right. It was in the back of the trunk. I bought it, and the whole trunk was filled
with
with
the 8-track tapes or something.
I wish that was the case.
You're like, I bought this car from a vintage lot, and I just stumbled across, some bottles of wine.
Cases of wine. Yep.
Like the car was worth $1,600, the bottles were worth $16,000.
Yeah.
But we've talked a little bit about the creativity. Chris is our kind of craft cocktail guy. He likes to make them both at home and when he's at TAV. Let's talk a little bit about the creativity of the cocktails. For those that maybe haven't come to visit, we're going to start talking a little bit more about you as we fade away from the restaurant, but I'm going to give you a drink. Like, I like this. What would somebody else like on your menu? Because there are 52 cards in the deck, and so that is a Cheesecake Factory of craft cocktails.
Absolutely.
If you think about it. So let's talk everything from the basics. You can handle a tequila soda or a vodka soda, but what's something, let's say if someone is a little bit of a rum fan, but doesn't like too fruity of a flavor, so we're not trying to go pina colada or whatever. What's something that, on y'all's menu that would appeal to a rum fan?
So the beauty of the deck of cards is it's organized really easily for that exact scenario. So if you're like, hey, I'm a rum drinker, I would say look at all the 8s in the deck of cards. So all the 8s are rum-based cocktails. And then the suits indicate basically how soft and refreshing or boozy and spirituous in that category. So you're going to look at, you say, I want something lighter or citrusy or more fruit forward. We would say look for the ladybugs or bunnies in the 8s. And if you're like, I don't want as much of a fruit forward or something a little bit stronger, more spirituous, we're going to say, all right, get a wishbone or a dice in the 8s. So for those, wishbone in the 8s is our daiquiri, and then the dice is actually a Dunlop. And we put the Dunlop on there because it's 2 ingredients. It's sherry and it's rum. But depending on the types of sherry, the types of rum, the region, how you integrate those things, that one cocktail can be 20 different styles of a cocktail and really, really unique. So I would say hit that Dunlop up and get some sherry in your life.
Also, I hate to break it to listeners out there who have misconceptions about the daiquiri, but the daiquiri is fucking delicious. If it's made like a real daiquiri,
not like on the beaches.
Yeah,
of Destin,
not with
Florida.
your Bacardi. But yeah, give a daiquiri a shot the next time you're at a cocktail bar. It's pretty fucking good. Yeah.
How often do you have someone come in, and I'm not going to call it a basic bitch because I order a basic martini like every time I'm in here. I like a nice floor. Give me a dirty as the floor martini. So I'm a basic bitch. What's maybe the most hilarious cocktail drink someone has asked for here?
I think one of my favorite things to make when somebody asks for it is a Cosmo.
Really?
Because we actually had, when we first opened, we had a seasonal cocktail on the menu where our first seasonal menu, we're like, let's take all of these kind of 90s, like new age classics and make our versions of them and make this crazy over the top, really complex version. So we had a cocktail for a Cosmo that we called the Mucho Macho Man. So it came in a coupe. It's bright pink, and that uses it's house-made grenadine, Luxardo maraschino, lime juice, limoncello, and vodka. And somebody goes, "I'll take a Cosmo." We make that for them. We say, "Hey, this is our version of a Cosmo. We don't carry cranberry juice. We make this pomegranate juice-based." Grenadine, we make that Cosmo, and they're like, holy shit, I didn't know a Cosmo could taste like this.
Really?
Because it's a great cocktail. It's got sour, it's got sweet, it has citrus, it has a decent amount of booze to it. A well-made Cosmo is super balanced and really refreshing and delicious, and I think that's one of those, like, I'll take this, that is like, all right, check this out. This is something super fun.
I love it when you can, be like, you thought, this is what you know.
Yeah.
Let me just, stick my dick down your throat. This is about to be epic.
Here's the level that you think you're going to,
This isn't your Sex and the City Cosmo here.
Yeah. Shout out to Caller Daddy for coming up on you for the #1 podcast in the world.
So since we're talking about cocktails, though, what was the one cocktail that maybe, you had back in the day or something that really made you be like, damn, cocktails, this whole, what you can do with all this stuff?
That was going to be my next question, too, was, the process.
I'm not sure if it was ever really one cocktail in particular. I think the very first time a bartender showed me, and it was a manager of mine at the time, literally did vodka side by side, and one he shook and one he stirred, and made me taste them side by side and understand the different process in that. I was like, holy shit, I had no idea, A, that this is how this worked, and B, that this could be so fundamentally different in such a simple spirit just by shaking or stirred. What's the science behind that and why?
I love it. So it wasn't as much of a drink that opened your eyes, but it was this is a little bit more deeper than just putting a solo cup on top of a gimlet.
Yeah.
Giving it a shake. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Follow-up question. I saw you getting rid of some of the liquor in your bar at your house. Not only do I want some of it, but is that what you do in your free time? You're like, let's go home. I'm going to catch a buzz, and I'm going to create some gnarly stuff at home. Is that how some of these things come to fruition?
You know what? The best part of all that is I have so many bottles of liquor at my house because I actually don't drink cocktails at my house. So until the pandemic, I actually didn't even have tools to measure and make cocktails. I didn't have shaker tins. I didn't have a jigger. I didn't have a strainers.
Left it all at work?
I just never did that. I think it's kind of the same adage of, chefs, when they come home from work, they're eating Cheetos or frozen pizza, doing ramen, things like that. It was just I would only make cocktails for other people, or if we had people over, or, my partner, if she wanted a good cocktail, or my roommate, if he wanted a cocktail, I'd make cocktails for them. But it was always just free pouring and just like, here's something for you.
Eyeballing stuff.